man was implicated in the murders of over 7 gay men. He also sparked one of the largest gay controversies of the 1970s. This is the story of Paul Bateson. Welcome back to another True Crime TikTok, the Pride Edition. Paul Bateson was a gay radiologist living in New York City in the 1970s. He was also featured in the 1973 horror classic, The Exorcist, which is pictured here. Paul was an on-again, off-again alcoholic, and he spent a lot of his time drinking, spending time in gay bars, as well as leather bars in New York City. His story was also featured on Season 2 of Mindhunter, the serial killer thriller series. On September 14th, 1977, Paul Bateson met Addison Verrill at a bar in New York. They were drinking, doing drugs together, doing poppers, and then they left that club and they went to another bar called Mineshaft. Addison Verrill was a reporter who covered the film industry for Variety magazine. Addison was being recognized by people in the bar, and Paul was surprised that the person he was with was such a superstar. At around 5 a.m., they got a taxi together and they went back to Addison Verrill's apartment. At which point they had sex, and Addison Verrill revealed that he was only looking for sex and did not want to pursue the relationship with Paul any further. Paul hated the rejection, and he needed money, so he did something he never thought he would do. He struck Addison Verrill with a frying pan that he found in his kitchen, and then after he incapacitated him, he stabbed him in the chest. This is where the controversy comes in. Gay author and activist Arthur Bell wrote an article about the case in the Village Voice, setting the story against the larger issue of police officers not taking gay homicide seriously because they were seen as sexual encounters gone wrong. Bell ended the article by including the phone number for the New York City Police Department's Homicide Bureau and asking anyone with information to come forward. 8 days after the killings, Bell actually received a phone call from somebody claiming to be the killer to correct his assumption made in his article that he was a psychopath. "I like your writing and I like your story," said the killer, "but I'm not a psychopath." Detectives suspected that the killer would call Bell again, so they went to his apartment to wait with him. At 11 p.m., his phone rang again, but it was not the original caller. It was someone who identified himself as Mitch. He told Bell that the killer was Paul Bateson and that the two of them had gotten to know each other while working at St. Vincent's Hospital. He said Bateson was an unemployed x-ray technician and that he had called him earlier and confessed to the crime. Mitch asked to meet Bell in person, which the police told him not to do. Instead, they went to Bateson's East 12th Street apartment and arrested him there. When he was asked if he knew why he was being arrested, he pointed to an open copy of Bell's article in The Voice and said, "That's probably why." The police went to the bar and brought Mitch in for questioning as well. He was released after a few hours. Bateson eventually gave police a handwritten confession that was consistent with what he had told Bell. This is where things start to get a little messy. At the same time that the whole Bateson-Addison Verrill murder came out, there was also a series of unsolved murders of gay men in New York City. The bodies of 6 gay men had been discovered, dismembered in multiple bags floating along the Hudson River. None of the men have ever been identified, but police officers did trace the clothes that they were wearing back to a shop in Greenwich that catered to the gay community. The bags reportedly had writing on them that connected them to the NYUMC neuropsychiatric unit. They believed that the person responsible had to have been an expert with a knife, and so they began to publicly suggest that Paul Bateson was somehow involved in these murders. In comes more gay controversy. The director of the movie Cruising, William Friedkin, had spoken to Paul Bateson and then decided to make this movie based off of the 1970 novel by the same name. Basically, the premise of the story is an undercover cop goes into the NYC leather gay bar scene to try to catch a serial killer. The gay community heavily protested the making of this film because they didn't want to poorly portray homosexual life in New York City at that time, since there was already so much violence against them. And then in 1979, Bell goes on trial. Goes on trial in 1979. The state did enter his handwritten confession as well as the article written by Arthur Bell in the Village Voice. Contrary to his belief that he was basically going to get a slap on the wrist and be released, he was convicted after 4 days. At Bateson's sentencing a month later, prosecutor William Hoyt reiterated his belief that Bateson was a psychopath and that he was probably responsible for the unsolved murders. While Hoyt said there was no direct proof of this, he did say that Bateson, in a conversation with his friend Richard Ryan, admitted to the murder of Addison Verrill as well as the murders of the other men. Bateson denied any role in the other murders. Bateson ultimately served 24 years and 3 months in prison. On the day after his 63rd birthday in August 2003, he was released from Arthur Kill Correctional Facility. After Paul was released from prison, people tried to reach out to interview him and ask him questions, and he just disconnected all of his phone numbers. He cannot be reached for comment. His address on file is not current. It is rumored that maybe he had moved to upstate New York and kind of disconnected from the rest of the world, But somebody with his exact name and social security number was reported dead, so it is possible that he is dead, or he might have faked his own death. I guess we'll never really know. Thank you for watching. Like and follow for more. There are more queer crimes to come. Happy Pride Month.